Hello, Claudia here from Create with Claudia, and I'm so excited because today I'm bringing you the March block for my 2020 Mystery Quilt Along. And here it is, the grand reveal. It's a friendship star block. It's a fun little block to do. It's pretty simple, and it incorporates the two skills we've already learned in January and February. That's the square and then the half square triangle. So this is the example of the one that I'm doing for my blog photos. And I'm using this, couple of the specs. I use this same sort of white with the green polka dot for every month as my fabric A. You can use whatever you want, but for this and for the video tutorial, I keep the same fabric for fabric A every month. I think it adds a little continuity to the quilt in the overall look, and I just like the way it looks. So we're doing the friendship star, and we will get started. For this block, you're gonna need, two other things I forgot. You're gonna need, this month we're only making 2 blocks this month. Last month in January we made 8 of each block. This month we're only making 2, so it's a little bit easier and a little bit quicker for you. The other thing is, as with all of them, every month I use a scant 1/4 inch when I'm sewing. My seam allowance is a 1/4 inch. And when these are finished, these 2 blocks should measure 6.5 inches square. So that's what you're shooting for, is 6.5 inches square. So now let's get started. For this month, for both blocks for cutting, for fabric A, you're gonna need 4 squares cut 3.25 inches. So that's 4 squares cut 3.25 inches of fabric A. Staying with fabric A, you're gonna need 8 squares cut 2.5 inches. So 8 of those, 4 of those. Fabric B, which is that center square, in this case it's the red. For fabric B, you need 2 squares cut 2.5 inches. So that's fabric B. And lastly, for fabric C, and that in this block is those triangles right there, those darker blue triangles. Fabric C, you need 4 squares cut 3.25 inches. So we're just going to make 1 block today. So for this block you're going to need to sort of half this. So I need 2 of this, 2 of these, 4 of these, and just 1 of those. All right. So you're going to set your center block, fabric B, aside, and you're going to set these smaller squares of fabric A aside. And the first thing we're going to do is work on those half square triangles. So you're going to take your fabric A, or whichever fabric is lighter, just so you can see it, and you're going to mark on the back a diagonal line. So you're going to need your ruler and a pencil or some sort of marking tool. And you're going to mark down from corner to corner. I'm going to make that a little darker so you can see it. There you go. And that's going to be your sewing guide, that you do not want to sew on that line, and I'll show you in a second how you do want to sew. And we'll do that with the other square. All right. Now you're going to take your fabric C, and you'll find the right side facing up. Now this is a batik, so it's a little bit harder to find the right side, but most times you can find the right side of fabric. So this right is going to be the right side, and this is the right side of your fabric A, and you're going to line them up together. All right, so they're nice and even, and this will show you if you have any cutting mistakes. It looks pretty good. There's maybe a teeny tiny bit off there, but no big deal. And you're going to sew down along using your sewing guide 1/4 inch on both sides of that line. So I'm going to do that, and I'll show you the result in a second. Okay, so I have sewn down the lines. I'm going to trim away all those excess threads. Threads, they're all over. I always get, whenever I'm sewing, I have them all over my clothes. I try not to wear black when I'm wearing them, when I'm sewing, because they get all over the place, and I'll just put those aside. All right, so you can see how I've sewn 1/4 inch on either side of that drawn line. So now I'm going to take my rotary cutter and a ruler and I'm going to cut along that drawn line. I'm going to split this in two and I'll repeat it with the next one. All right, and now I have 4 units, which I'm going to press open and I'm going to press towards the dark, so it'll look like that on the back. And then we're going to trim them down to the size we need. So there's what your units should look like. I'll be right back after pressing. Alrighty, here are my 4 half square triangles, and they just need to be trimmed down to the size that I need, and that's 2.5 inches. So each one of these needs to be trimmed down to 2.5 inches square, and I will show you how I do that. Now I have this nice ruler that I love. It has this nice diagonal line. Hopefully you can see it. I put my hand behind it. And that helps me line it up with my half square triangle so I get a nice even line. So I'll show you to do that. Again, 2.5 inches square is what you need to trim it down to. So I'm going to line, there's my diagonal line that's printed on this ruler. I'm going to line it up against my seam like so. And like I said, I always give some extra fabric here when I do my half square triangles, so they're kind of forgiving when I trim them. And then you're going to just square that up on this side. Watch your fingers. You can discard those little fragments. So now you have a nice even side on that side. You're going to flip it over. And this is where the measurement really counts. You're going to figure out where that 2.5 inch point is right here, by doing 2.5 inches there, 2.5 inches there, and bringing it over. And you're going to line that point up with the bottom, that square edge that you already cut. Line it up so, and then line up that diagonal line that's printed on the ruler with the diagonal line that your half square triangle. And that looks pretty good. And then you're going to trim away the rest. And there you have it. It's ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the other 3 squares that are left, and then we'll put this block together. All right, so I have cut down these to trim them down to 2.5 inches, and now I'm ready to assemble the block. So you're going to need your 1 square of fabric B, and that's going to be your center square. And here are those fabric A squares. I like to lay out my blocks before I sew them together. That way I can look at, see what it's going to look like. So here you go. And then we're going to take those half square triangle units we did before, and we're going to put those in like so. I have the fabric C touching the fabric B, like so. That's how I'm going to lay them out. Whoops, like so. There you go. So now we're ready to sew the block together and finish it up. Now, the way I sew my blocks together, and everybody does it differently, I sew my rows together like so, and then sew the rows together, sew my individual rows together like so, and then I sew each finished row together when I'm done. And I do press in between, so I will start doing that. We're going to start with these 2 here. Okay, so those have been sewn together and pressed, the first part of the rows. I'm going to show you how I press. It just makes it easier. So for these outside rows, I press towards this outside square. That's what it's going to look like. I press towards the outside square. And for this inside row, I press towards the center square, like so. And the reason I do that is I can now see when I'm sewing these together that that's that point. It's going to help me get a nice sharp point. There's my point on that half square triangle, and that's where I want to piece to so I can keep that sharp point. And that's just a sort of a little trick you can do, and it's a little guideline. You don't want to sew past that or you're going to cut off that sharp point. But what we're first going to do is go ahead and finish these rows up. All right, the rows have been sewn and now they're ready to piece together. And let me just show you, they're gonna look like that when I'm pressed on the back. And now we're gonna sew the rows together. And for this, I will use some pins just to help me, to guide me. And I take my time with this because I wanna make sure I get those sharp points when I'm sewing them together. Sometimes I even have to pull it out. So I pin right there on that seam. The trickier one is always the second one. There we go. Pin right there. Okay, and then I'm going to sew along that edge, still with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fingers crossed, my points are good and they look pretty good. I'll keep that. I don't need to resew it. Sometimes I will. I do take the time. You can see there's my point there. I like it, and that one there. So I'm going to press this and then I'll add the next row and I'll be right back. Alright, fingers crossed on the second set of points. I always held my breath a little bit when I checked these out. And I'll take it. This one's a little, there we go. That's better if I press it. It's not quite sharp enough. For right now I'm gonna let it be though, but normally I would probably take that out and redo it. But for this, I will go ahead and just leave it. And there is your finished Friendship Star block for March. That's the March block for the Create with Claudia 2020 Mystery Quilt Along. I'm loving it, and stay tuned for next month. Here's the one again for the blog post. You can see how it's amazing how different fabrics really make them look different, the difference in them. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and stay tuned for next month. And if you're interested in the quilt along, you can visit my blog. There's details on it. There's a tab at the top that says 2020 Mystery Quilt Along. Or you can just go back to YouTube. I have a separate section for the prior months. So you can see what we've done so far, and you can join in. You can join in at any time. It's a free pattern. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.